Your participation is strongly encouraged as well throughout this session. I will be giving a presentation, but I certainly want you to contribute. If you've had a similar experience, if you have a question, please, that's one of the points of today is so feel free to turn on your camera and participate in today's session. When you do want to speak, if you could also just say your name and what organization you're from. That way we can start to put names and faces together and that everyone gets to know where everyone is coming from. So I'll go through the presentation outline and then we'll get right into it. So what we're going to cover today as the topic is engaging students virtually during times of COVID-19. So we'll talk about current virtual engagements, future initiatives to continue to virtually engage students, including goals, measures of success for those initiatives, strategies for forward planning, and how to prepare your organization for next semester coming up. So that's the topic for today. I'd like to start with introductions as well. So what I would like to ask everyone to do is using the chat function on the bottom right-hand side, if you could go ahead and just type in your name, your job title, and what organization you're from. That way everyone can see who's on the call and we can get a feel for where everyone is coming from. So take a second using the chat function. Go ahead and introduce yourself. While you are introducing yourself, I'll just provide you a bit of information about my background. I've been in Doha now for about a year. Prior to moving here, I worked in Australia as a career advisor at the University of Queensland. And prior to that, I worked as a high school counselor. So I know everyone has different experience and different backgrounds, and I would love to hear your own thoughts and experiences within your school during this session. So like I said, please do feel free to contribute. Thank you everyone for typing in your introductions. I see Jacqueline, welcome, Mohammed. So feel free to go ahead and continue typing in your introductions. So this session, as I mentioned, is all about virtual engagement. All of us in education, we understand the importance of student engagement. There's a direct correlation to student success and student engagement. If you wouldn't mind maybe just putting yourself on mute, if you're not currently, I just hear a bit of static. So if you're not on mute, if you wouldn't mind doing so. Okay, so I'll keep going. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Fadi, for joining. Fatima, Naj, excellent. Thank you, everyone. So as I was saying, engagement is extremely critical in the success, both professionally, both academically, for our students. Many universities have entire teams dedicated to student engagement. But what does that look like on a virtual platform? It's easy to perhaps come up with exciting and fun initiatives to engage students when we're physically face-to-face with them, but how do we do that virtually? So many of you have probably been on calls that look similar to this. You see a lot of faces, you see some names, you may or may not know people. So what we will be looking at this session is strategies for engaging students virtually, especially during this time when there is a lot going on and a lot of distractions for students. Thank you, everyone else who's introducing yourself. So what I want to start with is to talk about what current initiatives everyone is offering virtually. I think in one of our previous Career Cafe sessions, we got a feel for some of the initiatives that people are offering, workshops, appointments, but I'd like to understand from the other schools that are on board, what changes did you have to make in order to migrate your service to be virtual? I assume there would be a change in delivery, a change in approach. Did you have to modify your content, reduce your content? So I'd like to ask you to use your microphones, turn on your camera, and tell us a little bit about how did you migrate your existing services to be virtual offerings? And if you don't want to use the camera or microphone, feel free to type in the chat. But remember, one of the main points is to hear how other people are are navigating this time and to get some tips from everyone. So what services are you offering virtually? And what changes did you have to make to that? Someone's using Google Classroom and using Naviance.
Yes.
Yep. Has anyone experimented with recording workshops or presentations versus live workshops or presentations?
We have a question from Jason.
Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Welcome.
It's not really a question, but I just would like to share. I'm Jason. I'm the principal of the Philippine International School, Qatar. So our school is from preschool to grade 12. So the start of the suspension of classes due to the pandemic, it was in March 10. So we were having some difficulties in the transition. Fortunately, we already started way back around 2 or 3 years already with the Edmodo learning management system. Although it was just an option, but at the start of the suspension of classes, we used that. And after 2 weeks, we were required by the ministry to conduct a virtual class. So to cut the story short, we looked for Zoom, and then there was issues on Zoom. I know you also follow that. So we decided to use Google Meet since we are with G Suite. So right now we're having online plus virtual class. So, and we're about to end our school year with that modality, with that mode. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Jason. So it's good to hear that you had a bit of infrastructure in place. I know that that could have been a big challenge for a lot of people who had to make a transition very quickly, is knowing what platforms to utilize, how to quickly transition over. And I think that's something that a lot of people are still trying to figure out, are the right platforms to use and for when. And I will talk a little bit more about the platforms, but thank you so much for sharing with us, Jason. Appreciate that. Any other schools or organizations that are on would like to talk about the use of either live presentations or workshops that they've done versus recorded? Because I think what we are seeing is that students obviously have a lot going on. They're trying to do online schooling. Parents are home. There are distractions, obviously. So is anyone doing live presentations or live workshops with success, or is everyone looking more at a recorded model and allowing students to then view on their own time? Anybody would like to speak to that? Oh, Mohammed, yes, you can unmute yourself, yes.
Yes, hi. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Mohammed here from Georgetown University. I just want to say thank you for everyone for putting this together. It's incredibly useful. 2 points here. The first one is student outreach to the careers office. I am in charge of the career services office here, and we continue to provide students with advising, but we realize that students are hesitant to book online appointments or put something on our calendars. And looking back to the good old days, if we can say it this way, it was a lot easier for students to just walk into the office. So we had to replicate that, and we created, you've asked a question about what are the virtual tools that we're using at the moment. We created a virtual waiting room, we use Handshake here at our campus. And that has been very, very useful, creating some sort of similarity between the way students used to approach our office and the situation right now. Asked another question about the youth. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Thank you.
For synchronous and asynchronous sessions, we haven't tried yet any recorded sessions in terms of career advising or counseling. We've had live sessions that were recorded and made available for students at a later time. And surprisingly, there were still accessed the similar number of students who attended is quite similar to the students who viewed the session after. We did notice that as we walk into the summer, the number of students who are tuning into the live sessions is reduced. So we are at the moment looking at the possibility of recording our sessions.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And that's something I've been looking at a lot in the research for this, is seeing that, as I mentioned, students have a lot of different competing priorities and motivation levels. So some people have said that having the live presentation isn't necessarily as important as just having it recorded and allowing students to access on their own time. So thank you for your comments there, Mohammed. Mohammed, can you maybe elaborate just a little bit more on how the waiting room works? I know you said you utilize the handshake platform, but how does that actually work at your school, your university?
So, excuse me, it's straightforward. The first platform we looked at was utilizing Zoom, which I think everyone is using at the moment, and Zoom somewhere around the world are very happy with the bump in the number of users. Zoom has a function of waiting room and scheduling meetings, so that's something we created on our website directly at first. And then we noticed that within Handshake, there is a waiting room function that could be used by anyone. It really isn't about the platform, it's about the concept of sharing specific messaging with a student. You could also, I realized earlier today, someone from my team told me that you could also set it up using the Google appointment, which I'm obviously unaware of. That's why I'm mumbling, trying to figure out what the right name for it is. But there are different ways about, going to make sure students are aware that they could just walk in to a virtual space, if that's the right term to be used. We happen to use Handshake. We used Zoom before. Others may use, I don't know, Microsoft Teams happen to be a tool that's widely conceivable. It depends about the messaging. The key here is sending an email, and that's what we did with our students. We sent them an email that said, we are still in our offices. If you'd like to come over, click on the link here. This is our virtual office. If we're free, we'll see you directly. And if there's someone in the office, you'll have to wait us in the waiting room. And I think everyone used the waiting room function of Zoom or other platforms. And that's what we've done, if that answers your question.
That does. Thank you for that. So basically, from what I gather, it kind of simulates a drop-in space for students. Has anyone else trialed any sort of drop-in appointment space such as this in a virtual setting? No one as of yet. So that might be something for other universities or schools to think about for the future, is if we've heard that it's been successful, if students aren't willing necessarily to commit to a time, but if you say, hey, we've got these drop-in hours from 2 to 4 or whatever time, that might be a way to better engage with those students. So thank you so much, Mohammed, again, for sharing that with us. I wanted
just to
yes.
share also some examples from the Qatar Career Development Center. I think that will add some value. First of all, we are using a blended approach. So for certain target audiences that we are working with, in specific for students with learning challenges in Ausage Academy, we're using recorded presentations to deliver workshops. We just concluded actually the career readiness program. And for others, we are planning to use live sessions. So we're using different platforms as well. For us as a member of Qatar Foundation, Microsoft Teams is the best solution. So this is how we are going to move forward. And during the summertime, we will continue also providing virtual career advising sessions to students.
Thank you very much for that, Sini. So I want to have a chat around the challenges that we're seeing. So obviously this topic is virtual engagement. We know that virtual engagement can be not as easy as physical face-to-face engagement. So there are some challenges involved. Some of the common ones I've got listed there, like we talked about, there's not necessarily a structure to a student's day. They're a little overwhelmed. I think we mentioned a little bit before, there might not be the technical support required. So with everyone who's on the call, what are some challenges that you are seeing that your students are facing with virtual engagement? And maybe what are some challenges that you are seeing with virtual engagement? So what is it that you are looking as a potential, or looking for a potential solution for? Feel free to unmute yourself or to type into the chat function. Is anybody seeing, oh, I see a comment coming in, not being able to connect with students as easily because of tech issues. I can understand that is certainly a problem for many people. And I think with those technical issues, we're maybe not as able to connect face to face and do virtual calls if they have tech issues, but I want to investigate and explore different alternatives for us to connect with our students. I'll talk a little bit about that coming up, but I certainly can understand that tech issues causes a problem for that engagement. And I think that's why it's good to have these different ideas. Someone about to speak up?
And I wanted also to ask if anyone is providing any services or at least touching base over the phone. Even if we have some tech issues with different platforms and technology, did anyone try to connect even over the phone just to reach out to the students?
We did at Northwestern University.
Thank you, Marie. Were those scheduled appointments for student calls, or were those outreach calls that you make, or how did you go about connecting with students?
Well, our aim was to reach out to the international students who were in the dorms who could not go home. That was the purpose of our call.
Okay, so really being proactive, reaching out to those students who are in an even especially challenging circumstance. Did you find that the students were receptive to those phone calls?
Yes, they were. They were very appreciative because we took the initiative to check in on them. It showed that we cared, and they mentioned that as well during the conversations.
I'm glad you brought that up, Marie. Thank you for that, because I've read quite a bit of presentations and research that's been done to show that students really are receptive and appreciative to that personalized approach, whether it's a phone call or an email, but to check in on them and make sure first and foremost that they are okay, and that we are here for them. So I think that that's really valuable and something to definitely consider right now. I saw a few other comments I want to make sure that I discuss. Virtual call fatigue. Yes, I think everybody is getting a bit of this Zoom fatigue, because especially if you're interacting. Sorry, I'm just hearing a bit of feedback. But especially if you're interacting even socially on Zoom, you can get a bit of this. So being mindful of those sorts of things. So not all students might want to connect on Zoom. Maybe they're more comfortable with a phone call, but thinking about different approaches so that we can alleviate that virtual call fatigue is certainly important. Other people are saying they have your number in WhatsApp. Yep, we'll chat a bit about that. Reaching out to parents and students via email. Excellent. Some just don't take it seriously. Let's read what this comment is.
Yeah, it's from Mr. Salahuddin, who is from public school here in Qatar. So I think there are different levels of engagement, and depending also on how well is established the career guidance consciousness among the students community, that will depend a lot on the way they engage.
Absolutely, 100%. So let's spend a bit of time and chat about future initiatives, ways that you can engage students virtually going forward. So we've talked a little bit about your core services, what you did initially to migrate those over to virtual platforms. We're probably at a point, many of your schools are finishing, summer's about to start. It's going to be a very unique summer, obviously, this year. Students are here. So how can you engage with these students over the summer virtually? This might be something you haven't done before, so I want to have a chat about looking at new virtual engagement initiatives. And a few things I want to talk through with this is if you are looking at different ways that you can engage with students. The first thing is obviously make sure you have a clear goal for engaging. Be mindful that students' definition of engagement might be very different from our definition of engagement. I'll give you an example of this. In my previous organization, we conducted a survey with our students to ask them how engaged they were with career services. And an overwhelming percentage said that they were very engaged with their career services. But when we looked at the details, their definition of engagement was receiving the weekly auto-generated emails saying these are the new jobs that are posted. That was their definition of engagement. They hadn't come to see us in appointments or attend workshops. So for them, it's a very different mindset. So if you are thinking of creating a new initiative to further engage students, make sure that you have established what it is you want them to engage with and why. So just be mindful of those sorts of things. And the other thing I want to talk about is allowing students to help shape the content and the delivery method of what you are wanting them to engage in. So it's one thing for us as practitioners to say, we know that they need support with whatever it is, resume writing, choosing the right university to study at, writing a personal statement. We know that they need all of this support, but allow students to help mold and deliver the content in a way that's meaningful to them. So you might think about conducting a focus group if you haven't done something like that. Perhaps reach out to some of your students who've been engaged before. Can I just ask everyone to mute themselves for 1 second, if you don't mind?
And Paige, we have some raised hands. I think it's Kashima.
Sure. Go ahead.
Kashima, is there something that you would like to address, or is it a question?
Oh, I see that you wrote your mic is not working. If you'd like to type into the chat your question or your comment, I'll let you type in there. If your mic works, feel free to just interject. But what I want to discuss is, as I was saying, perhaps think about conducting focus groups with students. So if you've got students who've been involved or are really engaged, ask them to get together and let them know, okay, I'm looking for ways to engage students with resume writing. What are some ideas you have? The more that students can help deliver this or create this engagement method, the more engaged that they will generally be. They're obviously going to be in tune with their peers and know what their peers want to, how they want to engage, but also it's a career development activity for the students themselves. So that might be something that you can take a look at going forward. Cash, did you figure out, did you want to type in your question, or are you okay at the moment?
There is a question from Alia.
Mm-hmm.
It's regarding about internship opportunities, because a few of their students in the Doha Graduate Institute are requesting for that.
Sini, I might deflect to you if you wanted to answer that question regarding internship opportunities.
I think we can move ahead with the presentation, and then we can have such questions addressed at the end in a Q&A.
Okay.
Just to keep the flow of the presentation.
No worries. So regarding having students on board and helping these initiatives, has anyone trialed anything like this before, whether it was for this time of lockdown, the pandemic, or previously? Has anyone engaged students in helping to deliver or create or mold your initiative? Has anyone done that before?
Hello, Paige. Yes, I did actually, if I may speak.
Please, yes.
Yeah. So basically, I involved few students. I was doing a presentation about the body language during an interview, and I asked a student from the psychology faculty to help us in inserting or to add points about how psychology would look at the body language also. So not only from a business perspective, but also from a psychology related view or science. And then he actually helped in delivering this presentation. So it was basically myself and he took like 10 minutes to and he actually prepared a presentation slide. So that was in the normal life, not now, currently in this situation. But that's how they were engaged, and students loved the idea, and because they felt that they were contributing to that. So I did it twice. One was with an HR specialist who had a bachelor in HR, and who also helped in doing a CV writing presentation, and the other one was the psychology student. So they really enjoyed it, and other students looked at this initiative as they're engaged. They loved it because they felt that they might have a chance to do the same. So it was like a collective thing. Not only the two students were happy, but all of them were happy and satisfied.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Yes, and that's what a lot of the research has showed, is that the students are eager to take on these kinds of initiatives. And I think that this might be a helpful method for us going forward, is thinking about, okay, what can we do over the summer? Can we get students involved? They may not have, or perhaps they had an internship where they were planning on going abroad, or they had all these other things perhaps planned for the summer that no longer are able to happen. So maybe this could give them something to do. So think about what initiatives you would like your students to get involved with. Put out an email for a call and get together a group online and see what they can do. It gives them a sense of purpose, career development for themselves, as I mentioned, and will encourage other students to engage. At my previous organization, we had a project that we called Student-Staff Partnerships, which is essentially this. So students were partnered up with a staff member. That staff member gave them an idea and provided them a little bit of guidance, but it was up to the students to deliver that, whatever it might have been. So think about if that's something that you could utilize to better engage students virtually, particularly over the summer or even for next semester. Some other ideas for just events or things that you could do to further enhance your virtual engagement with students is have virtual events, first of all. I know that many schools might be, or many universities might be offering virtual tours of their campuses, or employers might be offering virtual tours of their offices. So maybe have some sort of virtual event. So if you're a school, you might have virtual college fair. If you're a university, maybe a virtual employer day or something to that effect. So think about, maybe you've already done some things like this, or maybe this is a new area that you're looking into, but virtual events are gaining a bit of traction. There's a few examples online. You can take a look at different virtual events, what might work for you. Something else I've read is that students actually do really appreciate the opportunity to connect with their peers. We know that they're engaged with one another socially, with their friends, but it's also good for their engagement with their peer group, because sometimes they can learn things from their peers. So maybe it is having a bit of a casual, maybe you call it career showcase or something to that effect, where you invite students to come and talk a little bit about what they've done to determine what university they want to study at, or what they've done to help them figure out what employer they want to work for. So think about maybe ways that you can facilitate that. And again, that could be something a student might be able to provide some support with you for that. Other ideas for virtual engagement is competitions. I've seen quite a few different competitions that people have been running here locally. So I know Qatar has run a writing competition. Qatar Museums has run competitions. This is a fun way to get students engaged. So again, think about what you've currently got, what offerings you have, and how can you put that virtually as a competition. I see some notes coming through. I'd love to know if anyone has done any kind of competition at their school, or if they're utilizing social media at all to promote their initiatives. Has anyone done any kind of competition before? Feel free to speak up or use the chat function if you like. And I've got social media here. I will talk a little bit more about social media, But in terms of engaging with students, something that is good for us to remember is there are multiple platforms and multiple different ways for us to engage with our students. And for our formal initiatives, workshops, appointments, probably best to utilize something like Microsoft Teams or whatnot. But if you're looking to just advertise to students or connect with them in a different way, does your school, I think most schools and universities, you have various social media. So how do you utilize social media to increase your engagement? So I said we'll talk a little bit more about that. I see some comments here. I want to take a look at this. You have to bear in mind that students need to get a break from this unusual year, fair enough. So they need more initiatives for fun competitions or ways of breaking the boredom. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. It is a very unusual year, and it is important to bring a bit of fun into this idea of career development and e-learning, which brings me perfectly to this next slide. So with this slide, I've got gamification written there. I don't know if anyone is familiar with gamification. I'm not going to go into the super ins and outs, but I just want to give you a bit of an idea of what it is. So gamification is the idea of taking something that has not traditionally been a game and making it into something fun and competitive, usually utilizing an online platform or an app. So if you've ever done any kind of e-learning apps, there's quite a few that are gamified. So I personally utilize Duolingo, for example, and there's different levels and badges and things. So it's the idea of creating a game behind it. So with this topic, what I want to mention is not necessarily gamifying something you have by creating this platform, because obviously these can be very time consuming and can consume quite a bit of resources. But what I want to have you all think about is to inspire you. What initiatives do you currently have? What are things that you try to get students to do? Is it review your resources? Is it to practice interviews? Is it determining what colleges? What things do you have? And how can you put these together to make it a game almost for students? So perhaps you have, if they complete, I don't know, 3 of your 10 items that you've got laid out for them, maybe they achieve level 1, or maybe they achieve level 2, maybe you do showcases for them. So there's lots of different ways that you can think about this gamification idea. Just to give you a few ideas, Kaplan, for those of you who are familiar with Kaplan, they offer an internal career development that's gamified. So I think they do like resume showcases, and different challenges and competitions for students within that. So that's pretty interesting to take a look at. If you'd like to look at a few more or at a few resources regarding gamification, CERIC has an article, CERIC. They've got a bit of an article around gamification of career development, as well as the National Career Development Association, so NCDA. They have a bit of an article regarding gamification. But the main ideas with gamification is to make something fun for students. It provides them immediate benefits. So they complete one task, they get a point or something, whatever you think of. So it gives them that immediate satisfaction, because as we all know, career development is a lifelong journey. There are multiple stages throughout it. For those of your students in high school, when they're determining universities to study at, that can take a significant amount of time. So to have an immediate reward, okay, I've achieved, level 1, makes it a little bit more fun for students. So you have those immediate benefits for students, and it gives them something to strive for that's achievable. So for many students saying, okay, I'm, junior high school, I've got 2 years until I graduate and decide what university, that's a long time. Or if they're starting university or in university, okay, I've got to get a job at the end of it. It's a long process. So having something that gives them stages throughout and gives them something that's obtainable to do it and in a fun way. So has anyone utilized any kind of fun element competition-wise or a gamified idea in any of their services that they have offered so far? Oh, yep. QCDC, yep, the competition concepts with Kidzania.
Yeah, we have launched not that long back, it's like 2 weeks back, an online competition through social media. It's intended mostly for young students to promote career awareness and career development concepts. We're using also a lot the edutainment industry, and we have a presence in both edutainment projects here in Doha. And we use games actually for the younger ones to be engaged in the process of career guidance, decision making, CV writing, creating a profile for themselves. And we are also planning to launch soon a game board to engage students and families. So these are some of the examples of gamification as we apply it here.
Thank you, Sini. And with the gamification, one thing too I just want to mention before I move on is that a lot of recruiters have utilized, or I should say companies, when they're recruiting students, have utilized gamification to test various skills, whether it's time management, spatial awareness, logic and reasoning. So I know that it's been utilized in the onboarding process for recent university graduates when they're looking to apply for jobs. So it's not just necessarily for a young audience, it can be utilized at all ages. So I'll move on, but like I said, have a look at those couple of resources if you're more interested in learning a bit more about gamification.
We have again hand raised from Kashima.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I got my mic working now. I'm so glad you brought that up about the games, because I remember working at a school and we created, it's called the Game of Life, almost like, not necessarily Monopoly, but the kids were really engaged because they were playing in teams, so they're playing against each other. So it kind of would be like career and college questions, and they kind of found it fun. And then another interactive game that we did with, say, like 9th or 10th graders, it was kind of like Wheel of Fortune, and they worked in teams. They got like candy for the winner, but it was really engaging, and it got the kids really thinking about their future. So thank you for reminding me of that, because I don't always think outside the box, and that's something that I need to kind of constantly be aware of. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I think, yeah, the game idea is so fun. Everyone loves to, participate in something like that. And I think these are the times when we need to be a bit more creative. We need to think about the services and how we can offer it in a way that does meet our students' needs, particularly during these times. Thank you for sharing that too. The next bit I just want to discuss is, how is everyone currently measuring their success of their virtual engagement? Is it simply quantitative data? Are you looking at just simple numbers? Are you cross-referencing to see if you're getting new students on board? Are you looking at how satisfied they are? How is everyone currently measuring your success for your virtual engagement initiatives? Feel free to use the chat function if you like. Obviously, with engagement, as we talked about, if you're starting a new initiative, you do want to make sure that it reaches its goals and that it is valuable to the students. So, oh, yep, someone wrote Zoom interaction, submission of assignments, depends on number of participants. Yep, numbers. No, the quantitative data seems to be fairly easy and straightforward to capture. And it's always good to have an idea around maybe the percentage of students that you're seeing and you're engaging with, and look at too, are we meeting their needs? So I think just to always measure your success, but then also to reevaluate your success too. I'll keep moving on. We talked a little bit already about the platforms that everyone is utilizing. So I know that there's been a bit of a mix. There's been Google Classrooms, there's Microsoft Teams, there's Zoom. As I touched on briefly, I think it's good to remember to utilize different platforms for different purposes. If you've got obviously one-on-one counseling appointments with students, you would want to utilize the platform that is deemed the most appropriate by your university or your school. So most of the time I think Zoom or Teams is useful, but also I think a few people mentioned WhatsApp. And I think social media is really, really powerful tool to engage with students. As we talked about, having a bit of fun, giving them a bit of a break from this Zoom fatigue and these different meetings. So thinking about, how does your school currently utilize social media to engage your students? Is it something you can do? I know that some universities, or my previous university, we used to allow students to do a bit of a takeover on social media for a day. And we would say, for example, when we had a careers event, a careers fair, or an employer presentation, we would give a student access to social media. We would do a bit of training beforehand so that they had some guidelines, but we would allow them to show the content or show what's happening in their own way, because they know what they think is fun and exciting, not necessarily we do. So allowing students, again, to have a bit of ownership over that, and allow them to help you think of ways to engage with students. Is anyone currently utilizing social media? Before I move on, is anyone utilizing social media to virtually engage with your students? I see a note here I want to comment on, that you could use the poll feature in Zoom to get live feedback. I love this idea. If anyone hasn't used Zoom yet, there are some functionalities on Zoom that are pretty useful. One, they have a poll function where you can get some immediate feedback, which is always good to do, and it keeps students engaged, I think, a little bit more. I think Microsoft Teams has some ability to add different functionality, but I'm not 100% sure of if the whole platform all the way across does. Zoom also has breakout rooms. Has anyone tried the breakout rooms on Zoom?
Paige, we have also Mohammed who raised hand. Mohammed, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Sini. Since we're at the topics of discussing platforms and how we're, migrating to the whole virtual world, I wanted to ask, has anyone possibly utilized, I'm not sure if I'm in a position to ask questions here, but has anyone utilized a platform for a potential virtual career fair? If the situation sustains for, as we're hearing rumors, for 2020, we might consider that. Do you have your own experiences, your views on this? Have you utilized your own, perhaps, platform for this?
Mohammed, this is a great question. Thank you for bringing this issue forward. Since it's a very new experience to everyone, we don't have necessarily previous practice to look at. But definitely it is on our radar. And it's also one topic that I know Qatar Foundation is actually working on currently. Because as the situation unfolds, most probably we will move ahead at the beginning, at least, of the next academic year, again, virtually. So we have taken this under consideration, and I hope we can share some news with everyone soon.
Great, thank you.
Yes, very good question, Mohammed. And I know that I've seen quite a few virtual careers fairs happen around the world, and I've seen some in Australia before. So I think that there are examples that we can certainly look to and investigate for future options. I want to mention some of the comments that I'm seeing as well. We were talking about Zoom and breakout rooms. I think a few people have mentioned that they utilized breakout rooms. I found this to be a good method to engage students or people generally virtually, because if you've been on a Zoom call before, it's a bit like the Brady Bunch. You've got lots of faces looking at you. You never really know who's speaking. But if you utilize this breakout room, you can have small groups of 3 people, for example, who are sent to a breakout room. They're able to chat privately, and then you come back to the main group. So I find that it reduces some of the intimidation factor for people to want to engage. So that might be something if you are conducting any kind of large session and you've got a lot of people that you want to have on a video call, that utilizing that breakout room might be great. I'm seeing the comments from Fatima. Thank you. It was you said felt like talking to the person sitting next to you. I agree 100%. So yes, if you haven't trialed it, I would certainly recommend taking a look at that feature. All right, I want to talk a bit about strategies for success for virtual engagement of students. We've already talked about some of these items, so I'll just reiterate a few of them now. I think as Marie mentioned from the beginning, to be proactive, reach out to students that you know might not come in to see you, to check in on them, make sure that they're okay, let them know that you're still here for them, but to really be proactive, especially right now. Students are probably quite exhausted, fatigued. They're probably not going to want to think about their career development right now. So just be proactive in reaching out to them. Also to recognize those needs when you are reaching out. Know that they do have a lot of competing priorities. School has been their main focus. Maybe now it's getting a job, but just recognizing those needs. Personalized, that goes along with what we were talking about earlier as well. I watched a town hall that's recorded by NACE, if you take a look at their website, and it's specifically on engaging with students virtually. And one of the things that they were mentioning is personalizing, sending out an email to a specific student saying, you know, if you remember, if you've met with them before, you've got notes, to personalize that email to them and to say, you know, we've talked about this last time, how did you go with your job interview, or how did you go with looking into that university that you're interested in? So really allowing that personalization to come through. Something else that's important is to create structure for students. We're living in a bit of an unstructured world right now. So what can you do to help create structure for your students whenever you are trying to engage with them? Maybe it's putting together a pack or an easy, you know, here are the 10 steps, but to help them create a bit of structure. Maybe it's offering weekly sessions so you check in with them every week on what they're doing. So think about adding that structure. I want to read some of these comments that are coming through. I'll take a look. Fatima, one of your staff sessions, you asked each staff member to choose a Zoom virtual background to reflect how they feel now. That's a really good idea to get an idea of where everyone's at. So changing their backgrounds. A few other things I'll mention, I won't go through this whole list. I've got an eye on the time, but including a variety of engagement methods. I think this is really critical right now. As we mentioned, people might be tired of getting on webinars and video calls. So perhaps recording it, putting it on a platform that they can access at any time. Maybe they would rather have a handout or a resource available to them. Maybe they want to know what's happening on social media. So having different access points to allow students to engage differently. And if you are doing any kind of virtual workshop or webinar, I would also ensure that you are very clear about what is expected of the students if they log on. Are they expected to be on camera? As we talked about, not everyone wants to be. So allowing students to feel safe, that they can engage with you in a way that they feel comfortable. And I think we've talked about having fun with it. I just wanted to throw this out there too, is to come up with maybe some fun names for some of the events that you're creating, like we did with this Career Cafe, something that sticks with your mind. Students want to have a bit of fun. So what are some names maybe that you can call it? I've seen other universities offer Virtual Village, and they have their list of different events and things on that. So have some fun with it. Think about what would get students motivated. So those are a few strategies. Does anyone have any other tips that they have found to be really useful in engaging with students virtually that they would like to share with the group? Okay, if not, I'll keep going. I just want to make sure that we've got some time at the end for questions. These are just a few tips on if you're conducting a virtual presentation. I won't go through this in depth. I think you can read through it. Breakout rooms, conduct polls or surveys. Just try to modify the session so that your student doesn't have to hear one person speak the whole time or whatever. So just think about different presentation techniques you can utilize. And then there was a little bit of a mention earlier about engaging with parents. So I would also encourage everyone to think about your other stakeholders and how you can virtually engage with them. Parents might have quite a few questions right now. Can you offer an after hours Q&A session so that they know what they need to do to help their students get into university? Or can you organize a online presentation for your universities, or ask them to record some content for distribution for your students? So think about your other virtual opportunities. I'm going to go through the last couple really quickly so that we got a few minutes left. Of course, think forward. We don't know what this next semester might look like. We've only known what this has looked like so far, and it's very different from what we're used to. So what I would encourage everyone is to think about what virtual tools you've utilized, what has worked for you, what hasn't, what are some new ideas and initiatives that you would like to implement going forward. And perhaps maybe you're going to keep some of your ideas virtual or some of your initiatives virtual. Does anyone who has offered some virtual initiatives, is anyone planning on still utilizing those when things still resume to normal? Okay, I will move on to the last bit then. So before I talk about or turn it over to Sini, I just want to summarize a little bit about what we talked about today. And thank you all for your participation today. So again, what we covered today is looking at virtual engagement for students, talking about how we migrated our existing and core services over to be virtual. We discussed looking at new initiatives. I think one of the themes that came out is to have fun with these virtual initiatives that you're offering for students. So think about what would be fun for them. And then also to think a little bit more about forward planning. What virtual initiatives will you continue to offer? What are some new ones that you might include? So Sini, I'm just going to turn it over to you. Sini is going to mention our upcoming offerings before we close out.
Yes, so we have a set of different webinars that they are scheduled in the course of the next 3 to 4 months. The presentation and the recordings will be available to all participants, so they can have a look and register later on our upcoming events. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It has been a very interesting discussion. And before we close, I just want to encourage each one of you, in case you have any questions, to address them. Even if it's not a question and it's a request on how we can better serve your needs, we would love to hear it from you.
Hi, Sini. Hi, Paige.
Hi, Fatima.
Hi. Is it okay if I just take a minute?
Yes, please.
Sure. Thank you so much. So yes, I've written it in the comments as well, and I wouldn't want to repeat it. But basically, I'm studying my Master's of Counseling, and I'm in my last year. I work in an academic setting, and as you know, Sini, I've done the course with the QCDC for the Career Advisor Training. Now, in my last year, I'm looking for a placement to get some, experience for the practice hours to complete the degree, and of course, it's beginning to, the counseling field. So I was wondering if any one of you have any ideas where I could start. I have looked into some things, but unfortunately, because of the situation, it's not very successful. I do have another year to look for it. They've given me, because of the COVID times, they've given me an extension. So please, if there's any ideas, or if anyone would like to, maybe just have a chat as a mentor or a guide, I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatima. Although it's a personal question, I will make sure to reach out to you after the session, because yes, we do have initiatives that they are coming forward, and we definitely would like to engage you with. And just for everyone to know, we will be piloting after Eid, immediately after the holidays, a new initiative which is offering career advising sessions, virtual career advising sessions to students, starting with Qatar Foundation and ABP's students. And of course, later on, this will be extended to more and more schools, including international and public schools as well. And also, the idea is to support by having a lab for practitioners like yourself to come on board and with supervised, of course, support to gain credit hours.
I just want to read this question that's come through. How can we respond to many questions coming from students about the start of the new academic year? When are the international tests going to resume? Will it be virtual learning at the beginning of next year, and so forth? And with the uncertainty, how can we handle that? Thank you for your question. I think one thing that's really important to keep in mind is to be very honest with students and say, you know, we don't know the details. What we do know is that we have these supports available to you. If you can link them to resources that might point them in the right direction. But I think it's important to be honest. We don't have all of the answers, but we do offer them support. So maybe just talk about what sort of support that you can provide to them. Sini, would you like to address anything else with that question?
I think your answer was to the point. Given the uncertainty that it's not only for us, but all around the world, just being patient and sit comfortably with the unknown is the best approach we can have. And of course, to make sure that we touch base with our clients, with our students, and let them know that we are here. And as soon as we have a new information, a new update, we will be sharing that with them.
Thank you. So again, thank you so much everyone for coming today. I hope that you found the session beneficial. We do have a survey I'd like for you to fill out to tell us a little bit about what topics you'd like to see, or if you're finding this useful, because again, we want to make sure that it's useful to you. I think we've got Munira maybe is going to share the link in the chat. So in just a second that will come through. But again, thank you for your participation. I think that everyone learns a bit from everyone else in these sessions, so it's very useful. There's the link, so if you wouldn't mind filling out that survey. We're taking a bit of a break for Eid, and then as Sini mentioned, we'll be coming back next month with our webinars, so we hope to see you at some of those. So thank you again, fill out the survey. I hope everyone has a nice break and look forward to seeing you at future initiatives. Thanks everyone.
Eid Mubarak everyone, and we will see you soon.